Let's get straight into the next video in my Kaplan GRE word list that's great for anyone learning English or just studying for the GRE. First word is sinecure, and it means a well-paying job or office that requires little or no work. Some politicians join the boards of companies and get paid loads of money even though they don't do very much. That's a sinecure. Next word. This is a funny one. Pusillanimous. Quite hard to pronounce actually. Pusillanimous. Cowardly, without courage. Fearful, timid, cowardly. The pusillanimous husband just took the relentless rants of his wife without saying a word back. He was cowardly, timid, scared. Pusillanimous. Next word. Deference. Respect, courtesy. You must show due deference, due respect. Respect your elders. Or, I'm 10 years older than you. Show some deference. Show some respect, some courtesy. Deference. Articulate or articulate. So the verb articulate is to say something or outline your plans, for example. But the noun, to be articulate, which is what they're referring to here, is to be able to speak clearly and expressively. He is articulate because he can articulate his plans very clearly, speaking clearly and expressively. I try to be articulate on this channel. Satiate, to satisfy fully or overindulge. You need to satiate your appetite by eating that pie. Or he is insatiable. He can't be satiated. Just has a relentless appetite, will just keep on going. Satiate. Repose. Relaxation, leisure. Let's enjoy some sweet repose as we lie here on the beach. Some relaxation, leisure time. Repose. Repudiate. To reject the validity of. His argument was repudiated by the evidence that the defendant put forward. It rejects the validity of, it undermines, it's repudiated by. Essentially like an argument that's been destroyed and disproven. Repudiate. Requite. To return or repay. Most commonly in the expression unrequited, unrepaid, unreturned. So you might hear of unrequited love, where one person loves someone else, but that other person doesn't return the favour, doesn't repay the favour, doesn't love them back, essentially. Unrequited love. So something that's requited is repaid and returned. Requite. Next word, puerile. Childish, immature, or silly. You might have heard of juvenile. It's quite similar. It's someone betraying even younger behaviour, like of an infant. You might say infantile or puerile, just like a young child, immature, silly. Such a puerile remark. Such a silly, immature remark. Intractable. Not easily managed or manipulated. You might have seen this on a few other lists. Unlike puerile, this word does come up a bit. Intractable means they're very hard to keep control of, to manage. An intractable child is one that doesn't listen to instructions, can't really be coerced or manipulated, just does what they want to do. Intractable. Pariah, great word. An outcast. Someone who is cast out of a group or a society, becomes a pariah. Posit. To assume as real or conceded, to propose as an explanation. He posited his theory that all birds are wonderful. It's almost like the word position. That's their position, and as the verb, they are positing something. I am positing that X is bigger than Y. That is my position. Posit. It's the verb version. Palliate. To make less serious, ease. Often comes up in medicine, where to palliate someone is to ease their pain, often if they're going to die. Give them morphine and such. Make something less serious, ameliorate, palliate. Palliative care, for example. Esoteric. known only or understood by a few. A bit like the word abstruse, quite an advanced gnomic kind of word conveying the same thing, known only to the initiate, only to the insiders. That's an esoteric bit of knowledge. In fact, even knowing the word esoteric is quite esoteric, right? How many people know the word esoteric? Not many, so it's only understood by a few. It's an esoteric word, known only by insiders, by the elite. Propriety. The quality of behaving in a proper manner, obeying rules and customs. You've got to show some propriety at this restaurant. You can't do what you want. You have to keep your voices quite quiet, dress accordingly. You've got to obey the rules and the customs. Propriety. Proliferate, more common word, to increase in number quickly. The number of rabbits proliferated across Australia in a famous incident. Proliferate. Interregnum, great word. The period between reigns. So formally, regnum is like king. So interregnum is the period between two kings. Maybe if there's a while before the new king is coronated. But more informally, the word could come up in the GRE in the sense that an interregnum might be the period between two CEOs being in control of a company. The time between the two reigns of those CEOs. So the word interregnum is still used even today, even though there's not really many kings anymore. Prodigal. Lavish, wasteful. So it's quite a misconception actually. Many people think prodigal means someone who goes off and comes back because of the parable of the prodigal son. But actually the word prodigal means wasteful because the son in that biblical parable was wasteful with his money. So prodigal actually means wasting your money, being profligate. Militate. To operate against, to work against. Her actions militated against her good name. They worked against it, kind of proved it was false. Try not to militate against us if you can. It won't work. To operate against, to work against. Myopic. Fantastic word, definitely could come up, not seen in many of these lists. Lacking foresight, having a narrow view or long-range perspective is meant to say. Basically, being short-sighted is the way of technically describing, I think it's called myopia, or being myopic. It's like a condition with your eyes. But more commonly, the word is used for someone who can't see the bigger perspective. Someone who's stuck with a narrow point of view, doesn't see the bigger picture. They are myopic. Enigma. A puzzle, a mystery. Something that you can't work out. The adjective would be enigmatic. Just secretive. You just can't work out the riddle. And that riddle is called an enigma, a mystery. Ambiguous. Doubtful or uncertain, can be interpreted in several ways. Her words are ambiguous. Was she saying she was in favour or against? I can't work it out. Dictum. Never seen this in any other list. It's an authoritative statement. The dictum from the boss was that we were going to reject any customer who asked for the application. It's an authoritative statement from someone with authority to say it, a dictum. Almost like the words of a dictator. They are a dictum, something that must be obeyed. Overwrought. Agitated, overdone. She has become overwrought at the series of events. She's become agitated, overcome by it. Nervous maybe, tense, overwrought. Also, you could describe wallpaper as being overwrought. Like it's too much, it's over the top, a bit too ostentatious, a bit too decorative. Overdone, basically. So there's two definitions there for overwrought. Next word. Could be quite hard to pronounce if you didn't know it. Overwrought. Abate. To reduce in amount, degree, or severity. The storm did not abate. It kept on coming, the rain lashing down. When will this thunderstorm abate? When will it reduce in severity? Abate. Erratic. Wandering and unpredictable. Fantastic word to know. Definitely you have to add it to your vocab list if you don't know it. If someone is erratic, they are unpredictable, a bit wild, not really following the rules. A bit different from the word capricious. Capricious is kind of like unpredictable, but in a scheming way, like you can't predict their next move. Whereas erratic, the person might not even know themselves what they're doing next. They're just kind of wild and wandering around. Erratic. You're behaving so erratically. What's going on? You drunk? Inundate. Great word to know. To overwhelm, to cover with water. So technically, it means to be flooded with water, to be inundated, and you can use it like that. Or you could say metaphorically, I was inundated with work. I was overwhelmed, submerged in work. Inundate. Homogeneous. Of a similar kind. Have you noticed how all the employees in this company are homogeneous? They're all white men, for example, of a similar kind. Opposite being heterogeneous, of different kinds. Hetero, homo. Sublime. Lofty or grand. A sublime vision of the future. I would say it's even more powerful than the words lofty and grand. So in a positive sense, the word sublime means borderlining supernatural, like inspired, a sublime vision of the future. Like wow, almost brings a tear to your eye. Or you could just describe a meal as sublime. Just really special, incredible, almost divine. It's a huge compliment, generally speaking. Next word, innocuous. I've seen this before. Harmless, kind of like the actions of someone who's innocent. It was just an innocuous remark. I didn't mean anything. Harmless. Implacable. Unable to be calmed down or made peaceful. The word placate is to calm. So if someone is implacable, they can't be calmed down. They're relentless. They're going to keep on coming. Stigma. I've seen that before. A mark of shame or discredit. You shouldn't stigmatize that person for having that birthmark. Or certain groups in this society are stigmatized. They're shamed, discredited. They have some sort of stigma about them. Some mark that separates them off where people pick on them for it. You less often see the word stigma these days and more often see stigmatize, to pick on someone because of prejudice. But you can still say there's a stigma about being X or a stigma about being Y. Impetuous. Quick to act without thinking. Just does things without really having a plan. Impetuous, kind of like a spoiled child. Just does things, doesn't even care about the consequences. Impetuous. Heterogeneous, just like we said earlier. Do you remember the definition? I actually mentioned it. Of different kinds. Diverse. Unlike homogeneous, all of the same type. Heterogeneous is made up of different parts. Diverse. Heterogeneous. Next word. Capricious. Now, do you remember that? I also mentioned this word when I was doing another definition. Do you remember capricious? Unpredictable. Oops, went to the next word. Capricious is an adjective about changing one's mind quickly and often. Do you remember I contrasted capricious with erratic? So someone who's capricious might change their mind a lot, but often in a scheming way. So they kind of like Machiavellian. They see who's on the rise, who's on the fall. So they see the situation and gauge, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. They're changing their mind all the time. They're capricious. Whereas someone who's erratic, just kind of, you can't really, even they don't know what's going on. Eulogy. I've seen this in a few other lists. A speech in praise of someone. Quite often after they've died, it doesn't have to be to eulogize someone, it's to praise them thoroughly in a eulogy. Loquacious. Talkative. A bit like the word garrulous. Someone who talks a lot is loquacious. Lethargic. Great word. A bit less common in these lists. Someone who is lethargic is just sluggish, maybe a bit lazy or tired. Maybe they're indifferent, so they don't really care. They're disinterested. They're slow. Actually, I made a mistake there. I shouldn't have said disinterested. I should have said uninterested. Because disinterested means unbiased. Whereas uninterested means they just don't care either way. They have no interest. They are indifferent, lethargic. Usually it's to do with being physically tired or lazy. Like after a big meal, a lot of people become lethargic. They're just sluggish. They can't be bothered to do anything. Lethargy. Dissonance. Harsh and disagreeable combination, especially of sounds. So if a band creates some dissonance, like harsh noise. Honestly, the word dissonance is most commonly used in the phrase cognitive dissonance, where two ideas combine in someone's head and it causes them to be confused and they can't make sense of it. For example, if someone who hates the government receives a government check and then they use it and then they're like, wait, does that contradict my belief? That's like cognitive dissonance. It's disagreeable combinations. They hate the government and yet the government just helped them. So they receive cognitive, which means to do with the mind, cognitive dissonance. It's a weird combination in their heads and they can't make sense of it, like a contradiction. That's how it's used most commonly. That's quite an advanced definition though. Symbiosis, great word to know, not seen too often in these lists. Cooperation, mutual helpfulness. So a symbiotic relationship is one that helps both sides. Maybe like a parasite on an animal, or any relationship where both sides are helped by the relationship. Symbiotic. Forestall. To prevent or delay, to anticipate. She forestalled the disaster by quickly removing the other person from the room. They prevented or delayed the disaster because they saw it coming. They anticipated it. Spartan. Great word to know. Highly self-disciplined, frugal, austere. Based on the ancient Greek city-state of Sparta, where they were known to be very disciplined and not have any decorations. It was all just about training for war, no time for fancy meals. So now if you describe something as Spartan, you're either praising the discipline of someone, being highly self-disciplined, not giving in to any temptations, or you're saying there's no decorations around, nothing fancy, nothing ostentatious, nothing overwrought, as we saw earlier, just frugal, austere, serious. Either way, it's described as being Spartan, like the town of Sparta. Effrontery. Impudent boldness, audacity. He had the effrontery to speak back to his teacher, or she had the effrontery to ask for her raise in the first week of being at her work. The audacity, the boldness, the effrontery. Slightly borderline rudeness. Axiom. A bit like the word dictum. It's a premise, a postulate, a statement that's self-evidently true and must be followed. It's axiomatic that 1 + 1 is 2. It's self-evident, just a given. Or my behavior is based on certain axioms, certain premises that I just know are definitely true. Exacerbate. To make the situation worse. Remember that word earlier today that made the situation better? That was palliate. But to make it worse is exacerbate. She exacerbated the situation with her callous remarks, her uncaring remarks. And then we have exonerate, totally different, meaning to clear of blame. Quite an unusual word for these lists, so quite good. To exonerate someone is to prove that they are innocent, essentially, to clear them of blame. Pugilism, fantastic word. Boxing. Someone who is a pugilist is often using their fists, getting into fights. But you can use it metaphorically as well, not just literally being a boxer. Being pugilistic or being a pugilist is someone who's always getting into fights, maybe verbal fights as well as physical fights. Chicanery, lovely word to pronounce. Deception by means of craft or guile, cunning. He's up to all sorts of chicanery, all sorts of deceptive schemes. Don't trust him for a second. Dither. To act confusedly or without clear purpose. They might say act, but this is not like a game. If you say someone is dithering, they are genuinely confused. Usually they just can't make up their mind, so they're not doing anything. Like imagine you give someone a big decision. If you say that they are dithering, they're just sitting there. They don't know what to do. They're not really making any progress. They're like, oh, I don't know what to do. They're dithering. And I hope I wasn't dithering today in getting through that list. I hope I had a clear purpose to teach you 50 more words. But even if only 5 of them were new to you, I would see that as amazing progress. Because the bigger your vocabulary, not only the better your GRE score, but the more you can express yourselves in English. So I hope you like that video and see you in the next one.